Hello. We talked last time about what's the well-being. I've talked to you many times about the feeling of well-being and what's in my vortex. And what's been coming up for me on this trip is the adoration that you and Source have for all of us, or that my inner being has. Right from the 12 points, the universe adores you. And I read that over and over again, and it's another one of those things I want to understand the visceral and the path. We talked about thought paths last time, the thought path to that, my deliberate thought path to really viscerally living the adoration.
Well, you hit right on it with your acknowledgement in your words, that when you are feeling the adoration that Source has for you, you're right there. But let's step back and talk about it in very simple general terms. Speak your question again. How do I know what?
I guess it's
as briefly as you can. Just
what is my thought path to viscerally really living
but
that?
Before that, the question before that is, how do I acknowledge that I am in that place? The acknowledgement of that adoration. This is the stepping back that we want you to, the basis that we want you to consider. And once we have this conversation, then everything else will just flood in perfect understanding. All good feeling, or what you might call positive emotion that you feel, means one simple thing. You are translating accurately the vibration of your source. That's what it means. Because your source is always transmitting that signal. And when you feel that way, you received it. Think about that. Doesn't it put everything in the perfect context? Doesn't it speak to the fact that you are an extension of Source? Doesn't it speak to the fact that Source is always aware of you? Doesn't it speak to the fact that Source energy is always transmitting to you? Doesn't it speak to all of that? And so when you feel that adoration, what that means and all that it means, and it is enough that it is all that it means, because it means everything. You're tuned in, tapped in, turned on. You're in the receiving mode. You're receiving that signal. And you and your inner being are reveling together in this moment of appreciation. Ooh, you see? And of course, negative emotion means some sort of diminishment of that. As you understand that and you know what it means, take it in just for a moment, because we know you heard the words, but don't you really like the idea of your conscious accomplishment of no resistance and therefore utter alignment? Do you feel the importance of that? Talk about well-being. That is well-being. That's well-being. It's only well-being. It's well-being. It's well-being. And that well-being will dominate all. That kind of well-being leaves no room for anything not well-being. And think about what your power of influence must be when you've got that well-being, when you've beamed like a satellite dish, that well-being into the atmosphere that surrounds you. And then think about what happens next. We're going to tell you a story. Jerry and Esther were leaving San Antonio for one of their 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 months runs around the nation in their bus. So they had a 45-foot monster bus that Esther is driving and a car that they're towing behind it. And they're just leaving San Antonio. And they've just gone around the big loop where the Interstate 35 meets the feeder road that they were on, and off they're going on their way up Interstate 35 toward Austin. And it was raining harder than either one of them had ever seen it rain. And Esther is driving this bus. Now this bus is very sure-footed, and it has airbags, and so it's like floating on air. And Esther says right out loud, she's talking to Jerry, "I feel invincible." And in that moment, car hit a car, 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 hit a guardrail, hit a car, hit a car, hit a car, hit a car, hit a car. And all of them were just going this way and this way and this way and this way and this way, in front of, behind, around and over, and they just drove right through it. Because well-being cannot be interfered with.
Right. Trumps all.
Everything. When you accomplish that sort of well-being, and what was particularly wonderful about that moment in time is that there was more opportunity not to feel well-being than usual, but therefore more reason to focus upon the existence of well-being, and more habit of focusing upon the existence of well-being, an acknowledgement of well-being, and then an opportunity to watch what well-being means in an environment where it may not exactly be what everybody's got in mind. So when you tune in to the wholeness of who you are, and you move consistently in that atmospheric pattern of well-being, then things can come up close to you. In other words, that was pretty close. And Jerry said, yikes. It was impressive. You can see everything from those big bus windows up there above everything. It was like watching a ballet of collisions. And yet there was no sense of urgency. Esther didn't even hit her brakes. She just held steady as she moved on her pattern of well-being, while everyone around her did whatever it was they were in vibration alignment with, you see. And so we want you to get that sense of well-being. This is the important component of this. That sense of well-being wasn't fostered because all Esther could see was well-being. It was really raining hard. It was her established pattern. It was the way she so often felt when she'd get behind the wheel and off they'd go, knowing that everything was in place and they were on their way and on their way and on their way. And so what we're saying to all of you is that so often humans want to observe well-being and then pronounce it, observe it and then feel it. We want you to feel it and then create it. We want you to feel it and be the reason for it. And so we want this science of deliberate creation and art of allowing conversation to be about creating an atmosphere that allows well-being, period. Creating an atmosphere that allows well-being. And what is your best opportunity to create well-being before you have anything else going? Does it help you to know that it's possible? Yes. Does it help you to know what it is? Does it help you to know what it feels like? Does it help you to recognize when you're there and when you're not? The more you acknowledge that you've got it going on, then the less guarded you are. And the less guarded you are, then the less preparation you make about other things. And so?
So I really, through many of the things that we've talked about in my own practices, the well-being feels very natural to me. And I know when I'm not in it, but I know it's there.
So the well-being is an emotional state,
Yeah.
not a function of activities.
Not at all.
And then are activities inspired from the...
Yeah. It feels like the adoration of Source is an aspect of that, but different. I guess that's my question. How is that feeling? How do I feel that? Know more of that?
It's always present, and you just have to figure out to what degree are you allowing yourself to feel it. And you know, what we've noticed with most of you is that it doesn't need to be this way, but it usually is, and there's nothing wrong with it being this way. But by talking about it, maybe we can get you to modify it just a little bit for your own benefit. Your appreciation of others is usually the way that you allow that adoration of your inner being to flow through you. When we said it a time or two since we've been together, and we want to say it here and now, we want to say it over and over to you. We want you to really absorb it and know it. When we say, be nice to yourself, be nice to yourself, one of the biggest, most often ways that you can be nice to yourself is by appreciating someone else. There is nothing that is nicer to yourself than allowing the adoration of Source to flow through your focus towards someone else. That's why it feels so good. That's why appreciation feels so good. Yeah.
That feels like also the path of least resistance for me.
But in it, there is an identification that we are all part of the same thing, and that my love for you is equivalent, in fact, same as my love for me. And in fact, if I don't have love for me, then I cannot love you. That connection, that adoration that you're talking about, you got to have the vacuum cleaner plugged in first. And so it's all part of the same thing, isn't it?
So it doesn't matter if I'm vacuuming them or myself. It's
Does not matter. Does not matter. Everyone wants it.
Great.
Enough?
That was wonderful.
Really good.
Yeah, thank you.
Really good. Really good.